Joining us now to take a deeper look into the rules and regulations that Olympians face is branding executive with Envision Marketing Inc., Carlos Scott. Welcome back to BNC, Carlos. Good to see you. Over the last 2 decades, you've represented 8 Olympic gold medalists. What is your take on what's happening here?
I think I joined the sentiment of a lot of people where there's both devastation, there's disappointment, and then there's confusion. One of my main, detriments, if you will, is why in the world is marijuana on the banned substance list when it's been proven that there is no athletic advantage whatsoever from it. As a matter of fact, more than likely, you're not to have your greatest race or performance if you were to puff.
So, is this an opportunity now for people to try to get the rules changed?
I think so. I think there's so many things that are negatively pointed out, but I like to find the silver lining in the gray cloud. And the silver lining is she pointed out to her biological mother passing away just a week before the trials. Obviously mental health is a very taboo subject within the African American community. And sometimes there's that delay in trying to seek help. I think her coming forward and saying that she did have, those mental health challenges, it opens up Pandora's box to pose the question: are these sports leagues, is USA Track and Field, is USOC, are these organizations actually offering enough resources and professional help to their stars when they are enduring mental health challenges? They have financial advisors, they have advisors to help them with businesses, and so many other things. But mental health is something that I feel like we're behind the 8 ball, and we could definitely use some more push to bring awareness. And this could be one of those cases where it brings more awareness.
Yeah, it sounds like there really needs to be an update on how these organizations run and how they work. And I want to reference back to Michael Phelps. Of course, he was one of the most decorated Olympians. He got a 3-month suspension back, of course, when he was seen in a photograph with, he wasn't even, in a competition. He was just seen in a photograph holding a blunt, I guess. And he was suspended and, of course, lost some of his sponsorships. So that was back in 2009, and it was a photo that emerged of him. So we know that, of course, this is not the first situation, and he was not African American. He was not a person of color. Marijuana is marijuana, and they have their rules. So what's the process? Is there a way that we can, or that people can go about trying to make these regulations and rules a little bit more up to date?
One of those ways is there's been a long talk about some of these government bodies actually having unions. The NFL, they have a players union. The NBA, they have a players union. Major League Baseball has a players union. As of today, technically, USA Track and Field, as well as some of the other sports that you see in the Olympics, they really don't have a union. They have different committees and so forth, but they really don't have a governing body that is sanctioned by a union to really advocate on their behalf. So without that voice, therein lies the power or the lack thereof. But one of the ways that people have been talking about getting that change is by going after said sponsors. And I want to give kudos to Nike. Over the last 2 decades, we've had tons of athletes signed to Nike, and they are actually standing behind ShaCarri. And so, but it has to start somewhere. And I think if we change and allow for these players to actually have their own union to voice these opinions and voice their concerns, I think that would help a great deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we certainly are seeing some changes. Again, she didn't lose her sponsorship. They're standing behind her, which is, of course, much different than what happened to Michael Phelps. But this is something that we're seeing across the board, I think, in society as a whole. And athletes have been able to speak out about this. So How do you think, what advice would you give to her on how to get past this? What do you think her next steps are? Because obviously people are sympathetic to her. Some people say, well, those are the rules. She is getting support from her sponsors. But what do you think is the next step for her having, shed light on this situation?
It is a catch-22 and a slippery slope, but I think for the most part, her and her team are headed down the right road. That started with this morning by her going on today's show. She apologized, and then the second thing she did was she took ownership, and she also apologized not only to her family, but to Team USA, as well as her sponsors. Contrition is very important. Then the other part of that is, I think as a part of the bargaining, she has to go in some sort of treatment or things of that nature, and so that also plays into it. And then something else, and I know this is not going to be popular, but she could very well take a vacation from social media just a little bit. I'm not saying delete her accounts, but
Sure, Carlos.
she said some controversial
that
things.
certainly is a tough call. A tough call for somebody to take a break from social media, but we hear you. Thank you so much, Carlos. We've got to get moving, but we appreciate you being with us here as always on BNC.